one. And
hello, everybody. Do you see my screen?
Okay.
Can you tell me well?
Yes, we do. We do see your screen.
Okay, great, great. Thanks very much for this invitation. It's a pleasure. Yeah, let's see how it goes. I want to talk about several topics. One is about this kind of controversial idea that we can detect the fake news before it was even written. I'd like to emphasize the importance of media literacy, and then talk a little bit about the COVID-19 and how we can flatten the curve of the infodemics that is accompanying the ongoing pandemic. So let's start with a little bit of a definition. What is fake news? So you probably, okay, this is something that you might consider a fake news, and kind of, I guess most of you are going to agree, oh, there's Bill Gates who is going to, put us this digital tracking system, and this is all that the virus is about, and stuff like that. There are all these conspiracy theories. But what about this one? Do you guys think this is fake news? Okay, unfortunately, I don't see the audience. But okay, so that's probably not a prototypical fake news. It depends on the definition. Some people would say it is, some people would say it's not. It's obviously not true, but doesn't really mean to deceive, and doesn't really have it's not bad in the sense that this one is, right? So there's a difference between those two things. And under most definitions of fake news, this second one would not be considered a fake news. It might be considered political satire, which is actually in many social media platforms. So there's this famous slide by Claire Vardo from First Draft, which I really like. And this is something that really kind of, if you're going to remember one thing from this presentation, it should be this. I don't like the term fake news because it misleads people to focus on the fact, or on whether something is true or something is false. But there's more to that, and I'm happy that at least in the European Union level, people talk about disinformation. So what is disinformation? This slide explains it very, very well. It's something that is both false and also intends to do harm. And people typically, even many fact-checking organizations, are focusing on whether something is true or not, and they are ignoring this part, the intention to do harm. And to me, this is more important. It's at least equally important. To me personally, this is more important. This is why we actually started worrying about fake news, because the news basically got weaponized. And this is something, it's not my words, it's the words of many, many people. Here you see Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the person who created the web. He has been complaining that his invention is being weaponized. That's why we started worrying. And okay, a little bit of history. Why exactly did we start worrying? Well, because the false information has been weaponized to manipulate political elections. And we really started talking about this because of the US elections about 4 years ago, but there were similar attempts earlier than that with Brexit, and you know that. But there are much more major implications in other parts of the world. So because of weaponized fake information spreading in social media, in this case WhatsApp in India, people get literally killed. So they are kind of, let's say, there's fake news that this person of certain religion has beef, okay? And because of religious beliefs in India, you are not supposed to eat beef, and people go and kill the person, and many other incidents like that. And things can be even of much larger scale. So here, an official investigation by the United Nations blames an entire genocide against the Rohingya on disinformation spread in social media. Companies are in general quite concerned about that for other reasons, for reputational purposes. But there are other business implications. And this is false information that has been weaponized. This was back in 2013, before we started worrying about fake news, because the official birth of the kind of widespread birth date of the widespread of the term was in 2016, even though the term was in common use in the 1890s or so, more than 100 years ago. So here you see information. Syrian hackers broke into the Twitter account of Associated Press and put there 2 explosions in the White House and Barack Obama is injured. And you can imagine what this is. So Associated Press is one of the main sources of information these days, one of the 3 big ones, together with France Press and Reuters. And I'm talking to many fact-checking organizations. I'm talking to journalists. And journalists in some media, some major media are telling me, well, when we start fact-checking something, when we try to verify whether a claim is true or not, if you find it in one of those 3, France Press, or Associated Press, or Reuters, we stop. We stop checking. We know that it has to be true. We know that those guys have done the right thing. And you can imagine when somebody goes there and puts some false information, everybody believes it, right? So you see that 136 billions got erased on the stock exchange, and there are several similar accidents. Then, of course, there is the health. And before, this is kind of something that people were quite concerned about a year ago because of the anti-vaccination movement. There are several countries that are no longer measles-free. UK is one of them. And kind of, old diseases are coming back. And of course, now we are in the time of the first global infodemic, which accompanies the pandemic. And it's actually something very interesting where you have a combination of political and of medical disinformation. And you see here, there's also panic, there's also racism, and so on and so forth. I'm going to come back to this around the end of the talk. And at some point, sometime around the beginning of the pandemic, the World Health Organization had on its website the top 5 priorities in fighting the pandemic, and it has listed fighting the infodemic as number 2 in its list of top 5 priorities. So they are taking it very, very seriously. Okay, how can we fight disinformation? And again, as I said, I prefer to take disinformation to fake news because it has a very clear definition. Something that is both false and means harm. Okay, how can we do it? Well, Elon Musk had this idea. You know what? It's very easy. We are going to create this website where people can come and just vote on every article, any journalist, any news medium, any editor, any publication, anything, right? And yeah, this is how we are going to know whether something is true or not. And he even said, okay, I'm going to call it Pravda. I don't know if you guys know what is Pravda, but Pravda was the name. It means truth. It also means the right cause in Russian. And it was the main propaganda newspaper of the Soviet Union. The problem with crowdsourcing the truth is there are actually 2 problems. The first problem is that people don't recognize it. So this is the Euro Commissioner Maria Gabriel, who was responsible at the European Union level with fighting disinformation. And yeah, she was talking about a study that most of the people don't really recognize the fake news. Okay. Another problem, and basically, just because most people believe in something doesn't mean it's really true. There was a study last year in Russia that found that most of the 57 or 75%, depending on how you interpret the responses to a multiple choice question, did not believe that Americans wanted in the moon. And if you put this in perspective, at the moment when it actually happened, there was absolutely no doubt. In this same Pravda, there were congratulations, and Armstrong was actually invited to Moscow. And not only that, he actually went there. Okay, so there's absolutely no doubt that it actually happened. And so on and so forth. But now, most of the Russians believe that Americans were never on the moon. Okay, and this is something that so another idea can be, you know what, we can actually use blockchain to and there are some good ideas here. So if you want to track how a message has been changing over time, that might be a good idea. If you want to rely on the blockchain mechanism to say, look, most of the nodes in this network believe in something, so it has to be true, well, this is obviously something that can be attacked. And blockchain has been attacked, and there was a successful attack against Ethereum Classic, and money had been stolen. So this is something that we need to pay attention to. Okay, let's look at the next possible solution. Okay, fact-checking. This is the thing that people typically think of, right? When they think of fake news and what I prefer to call disinformation. And there has been a lot of work on fact-checking claims, or fact-checking rumors, or fact-checking entire articles. And there have been many manual fact-checking efforts. But let's look how much has been manually fact-checked. Okay, so this is a database that somebody has put together. And you see that Snoops has about 1,300 claims fact-checked, PolitiFact about 13,000, 17,000. But most of the others that are there, at least in this collection, they just like have a few hundred, right? And it's a very, very time-consuming process. And you can see that, okay, there are probably like a couple of 100,000 claims checked by now, but obviously there are many, many more claims that are being made on a daily basis. So one possibility can be, of course, to fully automate the process. We can say, you know what, let's have like a fully automatic fact checking. And we have been also working on this. This is a paper that is coming next week at SICM, where we have, so basically, and there are similar approaches, of course. So what you do is you say, okay, where is the claim coming from? Do I believe this source? How people react to it? Also, how this happens over time? And so on and so forth, how people are connected, how media are connected, and you put all this into some very complex neural network. And you can do those things. The question is, can we fact check every single claim in the world? Okay? And think about it. Even if you want to do it automatically, the way that it's fact check is done, how is it done? Well, you check how people react to it. You check what the mainstream media have written about it. You check, things like that. And it takes actually time to accumulate this kind of information. But time is short. There has been this study about 2 years ago by MIT Media Lab that was saying that fake news travels faster in Twitter, about 6 times faster, and reaches much farther, and so on and so forth, than true news. And there's another study that actually I have found in Annals of Applied Statistics, which is much less famous, but I find it much more important, is that 50% of the lifetime spread of certain very viral fake news happens in the first 10 minutes. In the first 10 minutes. Well, in the first 10 minutes, there's going to probably not that many people would have reacted to it. In the first 10 minutes, probably the mainstream media organizations would not have commented on it, right? And by the time you actually fact check it, even automatic, which means that even for automatic fact checking, the information is just not there. You don't have information to check it. Okay, there are certain claims like, I don't know, let's say the GDP of UK has grown by 20% in 2020. Okay, this is something that you can go and you can check, right? I mean, some statistics, tables, and so on and so forth. But there are other claims. There's a claim like there was a bomb in this street in this city. Okay, I mean, it's not something that you can find in some database. It's something that is it's a claim about something happening in the real world right now. And then, of course, things get much worse because these days you can actually generate quite superficially good fake news. So with the appearance of GPT-2 last year, you can actually go and you can try it. There's also Grover, another generator of fake news, and also kind of a tool to fight them. There's now GPT-3. With GPT-3, it's a bit harder to use it. But anyway, you get the idea. And the thing is, if you actually read the text, it probably breaks here and there, and you can actually find out that you might suspect that this is machine generated and so on and so forth, but people don't really read the whole thing. So in social media, you just have the title and, probably like the first 2-3 lines, and you can easily be fooled, okay? So which means that, yeah, there's a lot to fact check. So what we propose instead is to look at the source. And this is what journalists do, right? Can I trust this source? And the point is that even if you have some fake claim, some weaponized, some disinformation claim in social media, you might want to have a link to a web page where you elaborate on this. Now, you are not going to create a new web page for every single fake claim that you make. You are going to reuse them, and we can actually go and monitor what are the popular websites, and we can actually go and profile them, and we can be prepared. So next time you put a false information, where we can say, you know what, this information, we don't know whether it's true or false, but you only find it in 5 websites, and they're all kind of known. They have a history of being unreliable. And this is actually what journalists do as well. They are looking into the source. Can I trust this source or not? And this is why I like to say that we can detect the fake news before it was even written by checking whether the website, whether the news is being put, is reliable or not. Okay, so let me ask another question. I started asking many questions. Can we win the war on fake news? Okay. Last year, I was invited to a panel in the Interparliamentary Assembly. There were 800 members of parliaments from around the world, and for 3 hours they were asking us, together with some other people they invited, what kind of legislation can we possibly get that is going to solve the problem once and for all? And certainly there is place for some legislation. So certain kind of hate speech is illegal in many countries. And also there are certain regulations when it comes to election time for printed media. In some countries, this applies also to online media and so on and so forth. But if you really want to solve the problem, we need the collaboration of the media companies, of the social media companies, where the spread is happening. You need fact checkers, you need journalists, you need to kind of spread the word, to promote media literacy and so on and so forth, and obviously any tools that we researchers can make. Okay, so it's kind of a complex problem. But in terms of solution, let me tell you what is my favorite solution. It's again something that was everywhere in the news last year. It was that Finland actually is winning the war on fake news. Okay, it took them about 5 years. How did they do it? They do it through media literacy. They started, so after the events in Crimea, they got scared, and they started a massive campaign in media literacy, primarily in the schools, but actually targeting all parts of their population. And if something sounds very kind of emotional, maybe you should be suspicious, maybe you should think before you share. If there is this image that kind of looks strange, maybe you can do reverse image search and stuff like that, so that people can understand, right? Not to share everything, and so on and so forth. And yeah, so this is a map of media literacy across Europe, and obviously Finland is at the top. So if you have like a very, very good media literacy, you're kind of more immune to disinformation campaigns. Unfortunately, the country where I come from, this part of Europe is not so well. UK is kind of generally good. It's kind of near the top of the list. Earlier this year, right before the lockdown, probably like 2 weeks before that, I was in India. I was invited to give a talk there at a conference, and I visited the tomb of Gandhi, and I found this. Don't listen to rumor, but if you do, don't believe it. And actually, if we listen to this advice of Gandhi, many of the problems that we have are going to go away. Because if you don't act based on disinformation, if you don't spread it, if you don't believe it, then, it's not going to work. And the people that are engaging in this are going to lose interest in that as well. Okay, let me get a little bit now to the project and to some technical part. We have the Tambi Mega project, whose mission statement is to limit the impact of disinformation, propaganda, and media bias by making users aware of what they're reading. The idea is like to promote media literacy and critical thinking. We have a news aggregator, think of something like Google News, which shows you what you're reading. And we are building complex media profiles, which tell you what are the biases of those media and also whether you can trust them or not. We are doing fine-grained propaganda analysis, which is great for media literacy. And we are also doing tools to support journalists. Is this claim check-worthy, hasn't been previously fact-checked and stuff like that. We have APIs, we have browser plugins, we have Twitter bots, and so on and so forth. It's an interdisciplinary project where we have people from Arabic language technologies, from social computing, from collaborators from MIT, and so on and so forth. Quite a few students from Sofia University have been helping. Okay. Let me get a little bit more technical and talk about media bias and factuality of reporting. So one thing that we can worry about a specific medium, and again, look, here we are not checking one claim, we are not checking one article, we are profiling entire media. And this is something that is, as I said, I believe it's more important because the granularity is bigger. And in a way, it's also easier because you don't have to do it based on one single claim or one single article. You can actually look into much more information and also from more sources, even beyond the text. And I'm going to go into that in a minute. Okay. The other thing is bias. Okay. Look at this title. Antibody tests support what's been obvious. COVID-19 is much more lethal than the flu. Okay. That's kind of more on the concerned side of the debate. And here's another one. We could be vastly overestimating the death rate of COVID-19. Here's why. Okay. And actually, both of those come from very reputable sources. And actually, both of them can be true at the same time. It's not about true or false. It's more like which side of the debate are you on? Are you on the concerned side, or are you on the side that, you know what, you should play it down and so on and so forth? I mean, in Western politics, that would be more on the left side of the debate. This would be more on the right side of the debate. And if you're reading an article like this, you might want to know what is the history of this news source. Have they always been on this side of the debate? And then you might take it with a different kind of, in a different way. If I tell you, well, those guys are kind of, let's say, skeptical about climate change, but they have a history of always being skeptical about climate change, right? Then you kind of take it in a different way. Okay. How can we analyze a medium? We have done some work on it. You can check a paper that we had at ACL about this, and I'm going to give you some high-level idea. We're asking three questions. One is what the medium has written, okay? Obviously, number one is what they write in their articles, but also how they self-represent in their social media profiles, like in Twitter. Also, we're looking into if they have other channels. For example, if this news medium, I don't know, let's say BBC or Al Jazeera or CNN, if they have also YouTube channel, you would go and you would also look into those videos. You would look into not only what they say, but how they say it. Is there a lot of emotions, for example, in the sound? It is something that you can detect with speech analysis. The other thing that is very important is who reads it. Who is the audience? Who are the followers of this medium in social media? What are their bios? How they self-represent? Some kind of analysis of these demographics that Facebook already does and that you can actually access using its free advertisement API. And if you know what to look for, it's not super straightforward, but actually you can get it. Also looking into what people write about it, okay? Things like, what is there about this target news outlet in Wikipedia? And I'll give you, and obviously you have some transformer model and some ensemble and stuff like that, where you put all this information together, information from your Twitter profiles, from Facebook, from Wikipedia, from YouTube, and so on and so forth. Let me just give you some high-level idea about how those things are done. So looking into the text, okay, things that you can look at, okay, is there connection between the title and the body, how long it is. So for example, if it's very short, because see, it's not so easy to write something fake, okay? You have to be creative, you're going to be repetitive, and so on and so forth, and you can actually detect this linguistically. If it's very subjective, if it's very emotional, if there are moral categories like religion, war, and so on being discussed, is this kind of more controversial topic, those are things that you can do. In Wikipedia, first of all, is there a Wikipedia page, and then what does the Wikipedia page say? So, for example, here it says, okay, National Review is an American semi-monthly conservative editorial magazine, okay? Here it also says conservatism. So conservative means right-leaning. So remember that here we are looking into predicting not only factuality of reporting, but also bias. There's also connection between those two. I'm going to talk about that. Basically, the more biased you are, the less factual you are. And then how they self-represent, how this news outlet, this is a news outlet called the Angry Patriot, how they self-represent in social media. So for example, here you see Crusader, Republican, Take Back Our Country, MAGA, America First. This tells you that this is a right-leaning website. It doesn't tell you much about its factuality, but kind of it tells you something about its leaning, that this is a right-leaning medium. And basically, we analyze this automatically, of course. Other things that you can do, you can look into the URL. So, for example, abcnews.com.co, there's something fishy about this ending. And other things, if you have names that you can chop, like Alternative Media Syndicate, 100% fed up, Angry Patriot Movement. Serious media don't really name themselves with words that you can chop in this way. You can look into traffic information, and yeah, this is the YouTube channel. So we have like a separate paper in Interspeech about this, only looking into the YouTube channels to profile media. You can profile them by bias, left or right, or in terms of the factuality of reporting. But you are also putting this into the overall model. Now going to Facebook. Facebook is actually tracking us on many different websites, and it's profiling us in many different websites. And I can go and, as an advertiser, I can go and I can say, I want to put an advertisement, and I want to show this advertisement to Fox News users that have liberal views. And if you do that, Facebook is going to tell you an estimation of how many people, what is the target audience, how many people could possibly see this, your advertisement, okay? And then it's going to tell me there are 440,000 people that watch Fox News and are liberal, okay? And basically, if I query in this way, I can get this distribution, which means that according to Facebook, this is the distribution of people that watch it. Kind of, you see mostly conservative people. And we also put this information into our model. Another thing that we do is we are trying to detect the bias of media with respect to specific topics. So I might want to, and here, for example, we have BBC, and we have done analysis, and the analysis is based on the reaction of users on Twitter. So basically what you do, I mean, this explained here in this paper, just about this part, and here we just use this information to improve the prediction. But the idea is this: if we have a controversial topic, we can go and you can find many tweets about this topic. Then we can find, we can cluster those tweets and find out which side of the debate they are. Then we can find the most influential users on this side and on that side. And then we can find those very partisan users, and we can observe them and we can check which media are they referring to which media they put links in the context of this polarizing debate, okay? And so here, it turns out that when it comes to COVID-19, it's mostly left-leaning users would put a link to BBC, okay, in the context of this debate. And you see, for example, about the US midterm elections, okay, BBC didn't care. It didn't have a bias, right? In others, they're kind of a little bit more on the left. I mean, that's kind of indirect way to estimate it, of course. And this is yet another element, but I like it because it offers me explainability. Left and right are not universal notions. They are different in different countries. For example, I don't know, gun control is probably not a big issue in UK. Okay, it's not a big issue in Bulgaria. But then it is part of the left and right debate in the US, right? So what I'm trying to say is that what is left, what is right differs from country to country. But then in some countries, it doesn't even make sense to talk about left and right because there's no such political system. In other countries, left and right are mixed. So for example, in Eastern Europe, in Bulgaria, where I come from, left is, what is left there is actually something that is socially conservative. All the reforms, all the progressive, what is kind of anything related to human rights or to economic reforms and all this comes from the right. So the left is kind of socially conservative because those are the former communists. On the other hand, they're still left when it comes to economics. So it's kind of a mixture of left and right. That's why I kind of like looking into specific topics. Okay, so what we did is we went to this, trust has to come from somewhere. We are not qualified to go and to make these annotations ourselves, those judgments, whether you can trust specific website or not. So we went to this website, Media Bias Fact Check, and they are profiling media. So for example, here you see for New York Times, they're center left and they have high factuality. And we would collect those labels about bias and about factuality. Here you can see that, okay, this is looking into what was written. And obviously the articles and kind of what was written is the most important thing. This is just like the articles. Who read it is less efficient, looking into the users from YouTube, information, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. And what Wikipedia says about it is also kind of not so interesting. But then if you look at the majority class baseline, this is macro average F1 score, it's only 19. So each of those methods actually outperforms. And when you put them all together in some kind of ensemble, you can improve further. This is for left, center, right bias, or if you want political ideology detection. For factuality of reporting, it's a similar picture, except that the numbers are lower because it's a harder task. The baseline is similar, about 23. And again, what they publish is the most important information. Who reads it is less important. What is in Wikipedia is again kind of comparable, pretty similar picture. When you put everything together, you kind of gain several points over just looking into the article text. So the next topic, I told you that left and kind of bias and factuality are connected. You can go on the web and you can find this mediabiaschart.com, which is very, very nice. It's interesting. They constantly update it. Not constantly, but from time to time they have a new version. And here on this axis, you see whether you are left or right medium, and the higher you are, the more factual you are. So you see in the top, Reuters, Associated Press, Bloomberg, and so on, as the least biased and the most trustworthy. And obviously, as you get, the more biased you are on the right or on the left, the less factual you are. Because for you, it becomes more important to send a specific polarizing message on one side of the debate and kind of less important to stick to the truth. And it makes sense to, in the previous experiments, we have been looking into bias and factuality separately. It makes sense to do those things together. And we have done this. We had like, and another thing that you can do is, instead of doing a classification, you can do an ordinal regression, because as we have seen, if you remember here, see, we have a 7-point scale for the bias and a 5-point scale, actually 6, they keep increasing it, a 6-point scale for bias, sorry, for factuality of reporting. So we had multitask ordinal regression where we had like jointly predicting factuality and bias, and we also kind of bias on different point scale, and also centrality and hyperpartisanship. And we had ordinal marginal regression, and yeah, and obviously this helped. So this is mean absolute error, which is a good evaluation measure for ordinal regression. You see that as we add additional tasks in the multitask learning, you get less error. So you might still say, well, I want to know the bias of an individual article, not of an entire medium. So we looked into this problem as well. This is a paper that is coming at MNLP. There is this website called allsites.com, and they're publishing a nice manually selected triples where you have a topic, and then you have a view on this from the center, from the right, and from the left. And it's very, very nice. And we collected from here data. We have about 30,000 articles. And now what we did is most of the work on this topic has been doing distance supervision, saying, I don't know, everything that comes from Fox News is right, everything that comes from CNN is left. Well, maybe. Everything that comes from Reuters is center. Maybe. But it's actually not always the case. There has been a shared task at SemEval at some point. Anyway, it is known that it's not always the case. So that media, that you cannot really project a label from the medium to every single article. For certain media, yes, but especially those that are center left, or left, you are going to have a mix. So what we did is, it's very important actually to pay attention to this, because it's very easy for the model to learn the style of the source as opposed to learn the bias that you want to learn. Okay. Is this something? Okay. Anyway, I continue. And what we did some experiments, and so it's actually very, very easy to predict the source, even though there are quite a few sources. So in order to prevent the model from learning the source, what we did is we did adversarial training, where we try to, on the one hand, ask the model to predict whether the bias of an article is left, center, or right. On the other hand, we try to confuse it as much as possible so that it cannot really guess what is the source of this article. And by the way, we also make sure that every single article from, let's say, from BBC is either all articles from BBC that we have in the collection are either all in training or all in test, but we never mixed articles from the same source. Another thing that we do, we apply a special kind of triplet loss, where, for example, we say, look, here's a CNN article that is left-leaning, and here's a right-leaning CNN article, and there are articles like this, and here's a left-leaning Fox News article, and there are articles like this, and we say, you know what, we want the model to make sure that it kind of, makes those 2 points closer to each other, even though this is from CNN, this is from Fox News, because they are both left-leaning, but kind of to keep apart those 2 CNN articles, one left and one right, because they have different labels. Okay, if you put prior information about the media, information from Wikipedia, from Twitter, and so on, you get certain additional boost in performance. By the way, here are the results. If you just look into the text of the articles, with BERT, in this kind of challenging setup, this is what you get with adversarial training, and this is what you get also when you put triplet loss in addition to adversarial training. Okay, and the last thing is, okay, not the last one, but something else that I want to change a little bit topic and to talk about propaganda. So if you remember, the definition of disinformation had 2 components. So one is that it's something that is false and that it means harm. Propaganda is also something that has two components. One is that you try to convince somebody of something, and that you try to influence them, and second, that you do it on purpose. And if you pay attention, you're going to notice that propaganda, the definition of propaganda, doesn't say whether it's positive or negative. It also doesn't say whether it's true or whether it's false. Okay, it's completely orthogonal. However, if you want to do disinformation, you have to use certain propaganda techniques, and there's no option not to use them. And I'm going to give you some examples. Again, you can learn more. We have a survey on computational propaganda detection each day this year. But so those techniques are some kind of appeal to emotions, like name calling, or some kind of logical fallacies, things like, oh, you know, we are on the winning side of history, kind of, you know, most people are going to vote for this, therefore that's the right choice, and stuff like that. So we're looking into 18 propaganda techniques from the literature, and we are trying to spot them in text. And we created a data set for this with 350,000 words, which is quite sizable, if you think about it, because other data sets for name entity recognition, for example, we have 200,000 words, and here we have 350,000. But of course, they have like 4 or 5 named entities. We have 18 techniques, so it's much harder task. And there are also overlaps and so on and so forth. We have different models based on BERT. Basically, what we do is we try to predict jointly whether a sentence is going to contain any use of propaganda technique, and also what is the span and the label of this technique. And we have some certain kind of gated network where if the model detects that this sentence doesn't really contain a propaganda technique, then it's going to kind of, through the gate, is going to be a message that kind of suppresses the prediction of propaganda technique spans in this sentence, and the other way around. I don't know if I'll have time to show you, but we have like a very, very nice demo about this, where here are the techniques, where we kind of highlight them in the text. For example, here you see, we will pursue any aggressor. Those are automatic prediction. That's appeal to fear. We will continue until the full destruction of any aggressor. Those overlap, so that's why they are shown like this. So this is here appeal to fear, and here we have worded language, and so on and so forth. Here we have Congress will do our job to uphold the Constitution, defend our national security, and protect the American people. So this here is number 7. That's flag waving. It's appeal to patriotism, right? And that's kind of another propaganda technique. And this is automatic, and you can actually go and you can try it. This was the PERTA system. It was almost got the best demo award at ACL this year. It got like a honorable mention. And we had shared tasks on this. We had a shared task, we had a hackathon, we had 2 shared tasks on this. We actually have a follow-up shared task on propaganda detection in memes, where it's about multimodality. It's about detecting the specific techniques used in text, but also in images. And yeah. Okay. In the interest of time, okay, I'll kind of speed up a little bit. We are doing tools to assist fact checkers. So what fact checkers do is we can do 2 things about fact checkers. One is we can actually make them more productive, or we can automate entirely the process. We are running this Clef shared task. QAP actually checked that, and we had a roundtable there a couple of weeks ago, and there was an interesting roundtable where, and I took a slide from Full Fact, which is the leading fact-checking organization in the UK, what fact checkers actually want. Well, they want tools to help them with check worthiness. Should I spend time on checking this? Is this an interesting claim? On verified claim retrieval, was this fact checked before or not? And also probably some evidence, right, that is going to make their job easier. Okay. And we had a shared task. We had kind of a pipeline of tasks that more or less follow this. We have been running this for several years. I'm going to skip this. Here in QCRI, we have been developing tools for check worthiness. You input an article and it's going to tell you what are the most interesting claims there. It works in English and in Arabic. More recently this year, we had a paper at ACL. We have been working into this, was this claim previously fact-checked? And if you think this is a problem that we started working because journalists told us it's very, very important and fact-checkers told us it's very, very important, okay? But in addition to helping fact-checkers, it can help journalists. So for example, imagine a debate and as the debater says something, imagine that it tells beep to the moderator, this was previously fact-checked and here's a claim to, I don't know, to certain fact-checking organization. You can see it was previously fact-checked and you can actually put the person in the spot and say, well, you know what, that's not true, okay? And you can do this during real-time interviews. And this is something that, again, we're talking to journalists, they say this, if you make it work right, can revolutionize journalism. And we have been looking into this problem in debates. We have been looking into this also in tweets. And we have data sets and some initial models for that. And you can check this paper if you want. We have also some preliminary fact-checking bot on Twitter that does this. And now, quickly, I'm going to talk to you about fighting the infodemic. What we did is if you look into this from MIT Technology Review talking about the infodemic, look, even here in the subtitle, they talk about fueling panic, racism, and you start thinking, well, you know what? It's not just about whether it's true or false. And again, I had another slide that I have removed, but it's from another fact-checking organization. They are organizing things, disinformation about COVID-19, not only with respect to whether it's true or false, but also in other aspects that are similar to ours. Okay, so what you wanted is you wanted to have a comprehensive schema that takes the perspectives of journalists, fact-checkers, social media platforms, policymakers, and society. And okay, so there are jokes, there are rumors, okay, but then there are conspiracy theories, and you might want to treat them a little bit differently. There is promotion of fake cures, okay, and then there's promotion of racism, xenophobia, prejudices, things like don't eat Chinese food, don't eat Italian food. This was in the early days, right? And that's not about true or false, no? It's about something else. They're spreading panic. Oh, it's the zombie apocalypse. Americans are buying guns and stuff like that. There's blaming the authorities for their action or inaction, okay? But there are also positive things. There's things like, okay, here's a good advice, what states that want to reopen need to do. There's discussion of action taken. Oh, this is what Germany does. They're doing extensive testing, stuff like that you might want to detect. Call for action, or close the barber shops, close the salons. Discussion of possible cure. That's another thing that you might want to detect. Asking a question that might come over and over again. For example, is the virus going to totally disappear in the summer? I don't know, maybe some Ministry of Public Health might want to respond to that. And we organized these around 7 questions. The first one is, okay, the number 0 is, it has to be a very popular claim already. And then we are asking people to annotate, is this verifiable factual claim? Is it likely to be false? Would it be of interest to the general public? Is it harmful? Is it worth fact-checking? Based on all this information, you are kind of making this decision. And then if it's harmful, why? And then if it should get the attention of the policymakers, why? Okay. And we have a very nice annotation interface. It works in English and Arabic. We have collected some data. You can check papers. They are at this point just on archive. We have a hackathon. Actually, tomorrow we are going to announce the winners together with QCRI based on this data. And so actually on each of those tasks, we managed to improve with different models over the majority class baseline quite a lot, both in the binary and in the multi-class case. And multi-class sometimes is like 8 or 10 labels. And also, if you do English to help Arabic, if you use Arabic to help English, this actually helps you. If you take the context and so on and so forth, if you take where it's propagandistic text, this also helps you. Multitask learning, because you see there's some connection between some of those questions, also helps you actually quite a lot. See here. And we have also some demos. I'm going to stop here. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Preslav. That was very comprehensive, and I hope everybody is as impressed as I am. So should we say thank you, the speaker first, and maybe and that was really exciting. So any questions, you can just ask them straight away.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. Well, just for information. Okay. Are there any data set for COVID-19 at the moment?
There are plenty of data sets about COVID-19. There are really a lot, really many. Most of them are okay. So there are different kinds of data sets about COVID-19. Okay, so there are data sets. For example, there's a data set that was put together by our AI and the White House and so on and so forth. Those are research articles from Medline and so on, kind of research publications about COVID-19, and they had like an information retrieval task. Based on this task, there's also a track. Based on this data, there's also a track task. Then we have actually another Kaggle task that we're running related to COVID-19. It's about the BCG vaccine. By the way, there was 2 days ago, there was another publication in BBC that there are like new trials starting in the UK about the BCG vaccine. So, it's something that's very interesting. There are observations. So if you look, for example, Spain versus Portugal, right? Portugal is much better than Spain. Why? Because they have the BCG vaccine. If you look Bulgaria versus Romania, Bulgaria is much better. Why? Because we have the BCG vaccine, right? And actually, even between Eastern and Western Germany and so on and so forth. And of course, those are kind of mostly observations, and they are now kind of studies. So we have the data we have from the World BCG Atlas, and we have a Kaggle competition on that. Okay, it's kind of shameless self-promotion, right? And of course, we have this data set that I have just talked about with this holistic annotation, and we have a shared task on it at Quarin. We have been using this also for a Clef share task, and we have another one coming. There are several other data sets. Many of them are just collection of tweets without any labels.
Okay.
There are others that are typically using distance supervision. Those are coming, here are articles, and they come from those newspapers, right? And those newspapers are known to be bad. Therefore, everything there is false or something like that. There are other collections that are based on different kind of annotations coming from fact-checking organizations. So, for example, you go on the website, I don't know, of Snoops, for example, and you get claims about COVID-19, and you see which tweet they came from or which article they come from, and whether they are true or not. And you say, okay, now I know whether this claim is true or not, and here's this article that claims it, therefore I can get the GOAT label from there. And there are several efforts like that. Yeah.
Can I just mention in the context of the BCG vaccine that Brazil also has a mandatory policy of vaccinating against tuberculosis, but is not doing very well with COVID. So
there are many things, right? I mean, so yes, the BCG vaccines are different. Okay, they are not all the same. The best ones are the Bulgarian and the Russian one, and the Soviet one. Those are the best. Also, the Japanese one. Those are kind of, the 3 best ones. And then there kind of is a continuum. And of course, they are not the same over the years. It also depends how early you do it. Do you revaccinate after some time? There are many aspects, right? And kind of in the hackathon, we're looking into this as well, right? But yeah, I mean, it's not as easy, right?
it would be really interesting to see the results of the hackathon. That's for sure.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one. In your analysis of these data sets with respect to fake news and so on, are you finding there is a general trend towards fake news coming from right-wing sources or left-wing sources, or is it largely equal?
That's a very good question. If you look into, I have even like a picture that I can show you, but in the interest of time I will not. But okay, if you look into the vast majority, okay, if you look into the typical fact-checking organization, right, that is checking political claims, you're going to see that most of the false claims are coming from the right. Now, the question is, why is it? Is it because most of the false claims are coming from the, okay, let's say kind of, that most of this information is coming from the right? Or is it because the fact checkers have a left liberal bias? Okay, because kind of this is kind of what right people say, no?
Who checks the fact checkers?
Exactly, right. And it's a very, very valid question. So I believe that there's a bit of both. Okay, and the way that we have seen it. So, for example, we have been trying to, if you remember the slide where we have been trying to predict whether a medium is left or right on specific topics, right? We have been also trying to apply this to predict whether a medium is left or right, based on the bias that is there on certain websites that are labeling media as left or right. It feels like things are a little bit shifted. So what I'm trying to say is that, okay, suppose that fact checkers have a little bit left bias, okay? Then things that are a little bit left to them look more centric, okay? They feel that this is the mainstream, okay? So I'm not talking about factuality, I'm talking about how they perceive bias, whether certain medium is left or right. What I'm trying to say is that if you look into automatic prediction whether this medium is left or right, okay, and if you look into the gold labels, you see that there's a little bit of shift, okay? Yeah.
Great.
But kind of to answer your question, I have been also talking to journalists, and they are telling me that, well, it can be the case that today most of the attacks on democracy are coming from the right, because there's not that much extreme left. The left idea is kind of in a weak position these days, because it was where the communists were, and kind of there's not much money. It's kind of also not seen in a very positive way in big parts of Europe, right, and so on and so forth. So, especially the extreme left ideas, right? They're kind of not seen, they're kind of bankrupted, right, in many parts of the world. So that's why kind of the extreme is now coming from the right. And it was different, some years ago.
Right.
Okay, we're into tea and coffee time. Are there any other questions?
I just want to say that about the BCG vaccine, we had the purely NLP task where you ask people to extract in an article the interesting things about. Actually, you know what? Let me share a screen. Okay, one second. Just a second. I'll do it. Kind of. Contact. Okay. Here you go. You guys see my screen, no?
Not just yet.
Not yet.
Yes.
Now,
Yes,
okay.
we see it.
Yeah, this is the thing. We are doing this together with Elsevier and and others. And we had two tasks, and the first was kind of more NLP-ish task where you have to find and extract certain things that can possibly be added to the BCG Atlas. And by the way, based on the hackathon predictions, some of those entries have been added to the BCG Atlas. So kind of we had some real impact. But the second task that we have extended now until December 31st. So if you are looking for course projects or something for your students, there's also prizes. I mean, $3,000, $2,000, and so on. And this is this more open-ended, where you just get the data and you need to see whether you can make sense out of it, and whether it's textual data, but it's also tables that we have, and we try to find out what are the key factors, whether there are interesting correlations and stuff like that. And actually, there are some very interesting notebooks that you can go and check if you're curious. I was over them yesterday, and yeah, there are things that I learned that I didn't know.
Okay. I think we are gradually losing some numbers. Well, there's still 20 odd people in this session. I don't know if anybody has any more substantial questions or requests for links and so on. I'll be happy to forward them to Preslav. So unless anybody has any pressing, exciting questions, I'm tempted to invite everyone to thank the speaker again and to wish him best of luck in his endeavors. So,
okay.
Thank you, Preslav. Thanks again.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And here is a link to
Yeah,
the
for
website.
the system, yes.
I'll keep this going on for another minute, and then I'll switch off the recording and I'll close the session.
Okay, maybe then I can, if you're keeping it for another minute, maybe I can show you this, because I think it's quite interesting. I mean, I personally like it. This is this PERT system. Okay. So look, we are, as I have shown you, that we are showing the use of propaganda in the text. The interesting thing is that we can, I hope you guys see, you can see the distribution of the different propaganda techniques. And you can actually compare, I don't know, let's say CNN, okay, how they talk about coronavirus in terms of propaganda techniques versus, let's say, Fox News, okay? So look, I don't know, let's say CNN, look here. Okay, it's mostly worded language, and then it's fuck waving this kind of patriotism, but see, fear is here, number 3, no? And slogans are much lower. If you look here at Fox News, see where fear is, much lower, but there are slogans. There's flag waving, which is patriotism and stuff like that. There's doubt, relatively high, and fear is not, okay, it's, if you compare this, for example, here, you see fear is much. And you can use this tool, you can explore over different time intervals, you can see how the left, the right, see the topic, and we have interesting topics. We also have Brexit, we have gun control. You can actually go here, you can put any text you like. For example, I don't know. And, it tells me this is an exaggeration. Okay. I can put here a link to an article, and I can extract the text and analyze it and so on and so forth. So it's quite nice demo. And basically the things that we do, have them exposed as APIs that I guess, the propaganda detection, the bias detection, the check-worthiness, the fact-checking, the different kinds of COVID-19 analysis, all these things we have exposed as APIs. Okay, I